Hey guys! Today, we're taking a slow, relaxing stroll back to the 14th century, exploring how people treated something as simple as a headache. From grinding herbs to tiny leeches and mystical chants, we'll gently wander through the quiet world of medieval remedies. So sit back, relax, and let the soft clinking of glass jars and the faint scent of dried flowers lull you into calm. If you enjoy this peaceful journey through history, don't forget to give the video a like and subscribe for more slow, sleepy stories from the past. The first light of morning spilled softly across the village, touching the worn cobblestones with a pale, golden glow. Smoke curled lazily from chimneys, carrying the faint scent of burning wood and damp earth. Somewhere in the distance, a cart's wooden wheels clattered slowly against the uneven stones, a gentle rhythm that seemed to mark the passing of time itself. Doors creaked open one by one, and the faint murmur of villagers beginning their day drifted through the narrow streets. A baker stirred in his small oven, the smell of warm bread mingling with the cool, crisp air. A cat padded silently along a wall, its paws making barely a sound on the stone. In a modest house near the village square, a young woman stretched carefully, feeling the lingering ache of yesterday's chores in her arms and shoulders. She paused by the window, breathing in the delicate scent of herbs hanging from the rafters, sage, thyme, and lavender, drying slowly in the soft morning light. Outside, the village slowly awakened, each sound gentle and familiar, a rooster's distant crow, a dog sniffing around a wooden fence, the whisper of wind through the thatched roofs. For the villagers, the morning was never rushed. Each movement had its rhythm, sweeping the floor, arranging baskets of vegetables, tending to animals. Even the clink of water in metal buckets as it was carried from the well sounded deliberate, measured, and oddly comforting. It was a world that moved slowly, where time could almost be felt in the gentle sway of a broom or the soft creak of a door. And in this quiet, careful rhythm, the tiniest aches and pains, like a mild headache pressing just behind the eyes, were noticed and tended to with patience. Every little discomfort mattered, observed with gentle care, for in a village like this, attention to the body and to the senses was part of the everyday ritual of life. As the sun climbed a little higher, the village began to hum with soft activity, each sound weaving into the next, the rattle of pottery, the slow creak of shutters, the muted footsteps of villagers crossing the cobblestones. It was a morning of quiet diligence, the kind that invited a visitor, or a listener, to slow their own heartbeat, to notice each small sound, each scent, and each gentle movement. Here, in this sleepy, peaceful village, the story of medieval remedies and the careful tending of headaches would quietly begin, step by patient step. The apothecary's shop sat at the corner of the square, its wooden sign swaying gently in the morning breeze. The faded letter spelled a name that few ever read aloud anymore, everyone simply knew it as the healer's place. A faint smell of herbs, oils, and dried flowers floated from the open doorway, mingling with the crisp scent of morning air and baking bread from the nearby bakery. Inside, the light was dim and golden, filtered through a small, round window covered in oiled parchment. Dust motes drifted lazily in the shafts of light, turning and glimmering as though they had nowhere particular to go. The shelves were lined with glass jars, some clear, some tinted green or brown, each holding small mysteries, crushed petals, bits of bark, tiny seeds, and powders in soft shades of yellow and gray. The apothecary, an older man with steady hands, moved slowly between the shelves. His robes brushed quietly against the wooden counter as he adjusted a row of bottles, one by one. Each motion was deliberate, unhurried. He paused often, as if to listen, to the faint crackle of the fire in the small hearth, to the soft scratching of a quill against parchment in the back room, or to the subtle shifting of dried herbs hanging from the rafters above. There was no rush in his work. He opened a jar of rosemary, held it close, and breathed deeply, the scent sharp yet soothing. He poured a small measure into a mortar, then reached for dried chamomile blossoms, pale and papery, like tiny suns faded by time. The pestle began to turn, slowly, rhythmically, crushing, grinding, blending. The sound was gentle, almost like a lullaby, stone against stone, soft and steady. On the counter lay a small glass vial filled with honey, thick and golden. Next to it, a bowl of cool water reflected the flickering firelight. These were to be used later, when the patient would arrive, a woman who had been suffering from a dull ache behind her temples since the week began. But for now, there was only quiet preparation. Outside, footsteps passed now and then, a child's giggle, the distant lowing of an ox. But within these walls, time seemed to stretch, to soften. The air was warm and fragrant, filled with the mingling scents of mint, sage, and something faintly smoky. The apothecary reached for a small book, its leather cover smooth with age. He flipped it open to a page marked with a sprig of lavender pressed flat and dry. His eyes moved slowly over the neat, faded script, recipes for teas, poultices, and oils. His finger traced a line, for pain of the head, take rosemary, chamomile, and honey. Crush gently, steep slowly. He nodded once, quietly, and began to mix the herbs with patient care. The air filled with the scent of crushed leaves and warm sweetness. Outside, the village bell tolled once, soft and far away. And there, in that calm little room, surrounded by glass jars and parchment, the gentle world of medieval healing continued its slow rhythm, each movement, each sound, a small act of devotion to the art of easing pain. By late morning, the sun had climbed high enough to warm the cobblestones, softening the chill that lingered from dawn. The air carried the faint scent of bread, herbs, and smoke, a familiar comfort in the small medieval village. The apothecary's door creaked open, its iron hinge giving a gentle sigh, and in stepped a woman named Alice. She moved carefully, as though every sound in the quiet shop deserved its space. Her fingers rested lightly on her forehead, tracing the place where a dull ache had been growing since the night before. It was not a pain that demanded urgency, but one that pulsed softly, steady and patient, like a drumbeat far away. The apothecary greeted her with a slow nod, his voice calm and low, carrying the same rhythm as everything else in the room. "Still the ache, Mistress Alice?" She nodded, her eyes half closed. "Since the rain began 2 nights past. It comes and goes, like a bell ringing far off." He motioned to a wooden stool beside the counter. She sat, her hands folded neatly in her lap. The room was filled with a faint golden light, the air heavy with the fragrance of crushed chamomile and rosemary. A single fly drifted lazily near the window, circling once, twice, before settling on the sill. The apothecary began his slow ritual. He poured warm water into a clay bowl, added a spoonful of honey, then reached for the herbs he had crushed earlier. The scent of rosemary filled the air, sharp, clean, and strangely soothing. He stirred the mixture gently, the sound of the spoon against the bowl rhythmic, deliberate, as if stirring time itself. "Breathe deeply," he murmured. "Let the air rest inside your chest before you let it go." Alice obeyed. The air was warm, carrying the faint sweetness of honey. Her headache throbbed once, then softened slightly, as though listening. The apothecary took a strip of linen, soaked it in the herbal water, and wrung it out with slow, steady hands. Drops of warm liquid fell back into the bowl, one by one, each with a quiet plink. He placed the cloth across her forehead, smoothing it gently, his fingers cool and sure. "There," he said softly. "Let it rest. The herbs will draw the heaviness away." For a long while, neither spoke. The only sounds were the low crackle of the fire, the faint creak of the wooden shelves, and the slow rhythm of breathing, hers and his, mingling in the still air. Outside, a bird sang a short, uncertain song, then fell silent again. The pain did not vanish all at once. It eased in waves, as if melting backward into her hair and out through her breath. Alice's eyes grew heavy. She felt the edges of her headache soften, replaced by the weightless calm that came from the scent of herbs, the warmth of the compress, and the quiet presence of someone who believed in the slow art of healing. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, almost drowsy. "It's lighter now." The apothecary smiled faintly. "Good. Sometimes the body only asks for stillness." He poured the remaining liquid into a small bottle, corked it, and handed it to her. "For the evening," he said. "Warm it gently before bed. And let the mind rest." She stood, thanked him, and stepped back out into the sunlight. The village sounds greeted her again, the hum of voices, the slow roll of a cart, the flutter of laundry in the breeze. The ache behind her eyes was still there, but faint now, softened like everything else in this small, patient world. The apothecary watched from the doorway for a moment, then turned back to his shelves. Another jar to dust, another herb to grind. The quiet rhythm continued, just as it always had, and always would. Beyond the apothecary's wooden door, down a narrow path of uneven stones, lay the herb garden, a quiet world of its own. The garden was walled by old stones covered in moss, their green velvet edges soft in the morning light. Inside, rows of herbs stretched neatly in small patches, each with its own color, scent, and purpose. The air was still, save for the slow hum of bees drifting lazily from one bloom to another. A faint mist lingered from the night's cool air, curling gently above the leaves and petals. The apothecary stepped outside, a woven basket in hand, his breath visible for a moment before the sun dissolved it. He moved slowly between the beds, his steps light, as though careful not to wake the plants. He stopped by a cluster of chamomile, small white flowers with golden hearts, bending slightly under the dew. With practiced fingers, he picked them one by one, placing them gently into the basket. Each petal brushed against his skin, soft as linen. As he worked, he hummed under his breath, a simple tune, half prayer, half habit, the kind of sound that had no real beginning or end. Nearby grew rosemary, its thin, green needles gleaming with drops of water. He broke off a small branch and brought it close to his face. The scent was sharp, almost like pine, but with a warmth that lingered. He smiled faintly. Rosemary for memory, rosemary for pain. So many years, and it always remained faithful. A breeze drifted through, setting the herbs to sway ever so slightly, and with them came a soft chorus of smells, mint, lavender, sage, thyme, weaving together like threads of an old song. In the far corner of the garden, marigolds burned bright orange, their color deep and rich, standing proud among the softer greens. The apothecary bent down to gather thyme next. The stems crackled faintly as he pinched them between his fingers. "Good for warmth," he murmured. "Good for easing the spirit." His voice was almost lost beneath the steady buzzing of bees. He filled half the basket before resting on the low stone wall. From here, he could see the village roofs, their thatched tops catching the sunlight like ripples of straw. Somewhere, a rooster crowed again, slower this time, as though even it felt the calm of the morning settling deep into its feathers. He sat quietly, watching a single leaf fall from a branch above him. It turned slowly in the air before landing near his foot. The day had begun in full now, soft, warm, and patient, but within the garden, time moved differently. The herbs, he thought, knew how to wait. They grew without hurry, healed without urgency, existed in their own rhythm. And perhaps that was the real secret to curing pain, not in the strength of the medicine, but in the calmness it carried. He brushed the dirt from his hands and stood again, his basket filled with green and gold. The path back to the apothecary awaited, and with it, the next quiet step in the slow dance of healing. Inside the apothecary's shop, the morning light had shifted to a mellow gold, pouring gently through the small round window. Dust motes floated in the air, caught in the glow like tiny drifting seeds. The apothecary set his basket of freshly gathered herbs on the wooden counter, the faint scent of the garden still clinging to his sleeves. He began with the chamomile. Each small flower was laid carefully on a square of clean linen, its white petals still cool from the morning dew. He arranged them in tidy rows, not out of necessity, but from habit, a kind of reverence for the work itself. His hands moved slowly, without sound except for the occasional whisper of leaves brushing against one another. Next came the rosemary, thin green sprigs, firm yet fragrant. As he trimmed the stems, the room filled with a sharper scent, something between wood and sunlight. He closed his eyes for a moment, breathing it in. It was a smell that always brought him calm, a reminder of long days in the garden, and the steady rhythm of the seasons. On the far end of the counter stood the mortar and pestle, worn smooth from years of use. He placed a small handful of dried lavender buds inside, their purple faded but their perfume still strong. Then, slowly, he began to grind. Crush, pause, crush, pause. The stone whispered against stone, a low, circular rhythm that filled the quiet shop. The sound echoed softly, blending with the faint creak of the rafters above. With each turn of the pestle, the scent deepened, wrapping the air in waves of sweetness and calm. He added chamomile next, the fragile blossoms breaking down into pale dust under the weight of the pestle. Then a few drops of oil, olive, thick and golden. The mixture darkened slightly, becoming a smooth paste. He stirred it gently, as though coaxing the medicine awake. From a shelf nearby, he took down a set of glass jars, their rims cool and slightly fogged. He poured the crushed herbs into one, tapping lightly on the rim so no powder would spill. The faint sound, a soft tink, 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 seemed almost too loud for the stillness of the room. When everything was neatly stored, he wiped the counter with a damp cloth. The wood shone in places where his hand had passed, tracing small circles that smelled faintly of rosemary and honey. On the table beside him sat a small candle, half melted. He lit it with a spark from the hearth and watched the flame flicker against the glass jars. The light shifted gently, playing over the shelves like ripples on water. Outside, the village sounds continued, footsteps in the square, a child calling faintly, the squeak of a cart wheel. But in this room, time was syrup slow. The apothecary's every gesture, from wiping a jar to folding the linen, felt deliberate, peaceful, almost sacred. When he finished, he leaned back on his stool, letting the scents of lavender, chamomile, and oil settle into the air around him. The shop was clean, the herbs prepared, and the silence complete. He exhaled softly, almost smiling. Somewhere in the rafters, a sparrow fluttered its wings and then went still again. And in that stillness, In the measured movements, in the soft repetition, the work of healing quietly continued, the way it always had, steady as breath, patient as time. The afternoon sun had begun to tilt toward the west, its light gentler now, warmer, like honey poured across the apothecary's shelves. The air inside the shop was thick with fragrance, rosemary, lavender, and a trace of chamomile that lingered from the morning's grinding. The apothecary moved quietly, his footsteps muffled by the worn rushes spread over the floor. He placed a small copper pot upon the hearth and filled it with water drawn from the well that morning. It made a soft splash, the sound echoing faintly in the still room. As the fire crackled beneath the pot, he reached for a bundle of dried herbs tied with twine, chamomile blossoms, a sprig of mint, and a pinch of crushed rose petals. He untied the twine slowly, letting the herbs fall between his fingers. The water began to murmur, tiny bubbles rising like whispered breath. He added the herbs one by one, watching them swirl and sink, releasing their color in slow ribbons of green and gold. The steam rose in gentle curls, carrying the scent of fields and sunlight, of something simple and clean. He stirred once with a wooden spoon, then let it rest. The sound of the spoon against the pot was soft and rhythmic, metal on wood, wood on metal, like the faint heartbeat of the room. Outside, a breeze nudged the door, and for a moment, the smell of earth and distant rain slipped inside, mingling with the perfume of the steeping tea. When it was ready, he poured the liquid through a small cloth into a clay cup. The stream fell slowly, gleaming in the firelight. A thin wisp of steam curled upward, tracing invisible shapes before fading into the air. He set the cup down on the counter, its warmth seeping into the wood. He waited a moment before lifting it, feeling the smooth, familiar texture of the clay against his palms. He took a sip. The taste was mild, sweet, and grassy, carrying with it the calm of the garden and the quiet patience of his own hands. Each swallow was deliberate, followed by a pause long enough to listen, to the soft hiss of the fire, to the faint ticking of his own heartbeat. Outside, the sounds of the village drifted in, children laughing somewhere near the well, the low rumble of a cart, the far-off toll of a bell marking the passing of another hour. Yet none of it seemed hurried. Even the day itself appeared to move more slowly, wrapped in the same drowsy stillness that filled the little shop. When the last drop of tea was gone, the apothecary set the empty cup aside. The warmth lingered in his hands. He leaned back and closed his eyes for a moment, breathing in the faint perfume that hung in the air, a blend of honey, smoke, and herbs. It was enough. The light outside dimmed slightly, brushing the cobblestones with a soft amber hue. Another patient would come soon, perhaps with another small ache to mend. But for now, the apothecary simply sat in the gentle hush of his workroom, surrounded by the slow comfort of things that healed in their own time. The morning mist clung low to the ground, curling around the roots of the old willow tree behind the apothecary's house. Beneath its drooping branches sat a small wooden tub, half filled with rainwater from the night before. The water was still, dark, and faintly glimmering, reflecting the slow light of dawn. Inside, moving like quiet ribbons, were the leeches. They drifted lazily, coiling and uncoiling, their slender bodies glistening as though polished by moonlight. The apothecary knelt beside the tub, his breath making soft ripples on the surface. With careful hands, he stirred the water using a thin reed. The leeches responded gently, gathering toward the motion, their movement slow and strangely graceful. Steady creatures, he murmured, though no one else was near to hear him. His voice was calm, as if speaking might comfort them, or perhaps himself. He reached for a small clay jar, its rim lined with salt residue from the last preparation. Inside, the faint scent of the river lingered, cool and earthy. Each leech was lifted one by one with a wooden spoon and placed gently into the jar. They slid along the curved surface, their movements silent except for the faintest wet sound, like raindrops slipping down glass. The apothecary covered the jar with fine linen, allowing the smallest threads of air to pass through. He placed the jar on the stone windowsill, where soft sunlight was just beginning to touch the sill's edge. "A little warmth," he whispered. "Too much chill, and they'll sleep too deeply. Too much heat, and they'll tire." He knew this balance well. It was the same rule that governed nearly everything in his quiet trade. On a nearby table, his instruments waited, small brass cups polished smooth, strips of linen folded neatly, and a bowl of clean water reflecting the window's pale glow. The air was cool, carrying the scent of iron, wax, and damp wood. Somewhere in the rafters, a bird shifted, its wings brushing the thatch with a whisper. He paused for a moment to observe the tiny creatures. They pulsed faintly within the jar, as though breathing, their bodies curved in slow rhythm. To many, the leeches were objects of discomfort, repulsive, even frightening. But to the apothecary, they were tools of balance. He thought of them not as parasites, but as helpers, steady and uncomplaining. They asked for little and gave much, in their own peculiar way. When a patient came seeking relief from a pounding head or a fevered pulse, it was often these silent creatures that offered what herbs could not. The apothecary would place them gently upon the skin, watch them attach with deliberate patience, and let time do the rest. No rush. No urgency. Only the slow rhythm of healing. He sat by the window for a long while, listening to the faint dripping from the rafters, to the low hum of distant bees waking in the garden. The morning light had grown brighter now, filling the small room with a sleepy gold. He could almost hear the heartbeat of the world in that quiet, steady, slow, enduring. The jar of leeches glimmered faintly in the light. The apothecary smiled, content. Today would be a simple day, like the ones before it. There was comfort in that, comfort in the small, steady rituals that made sense in a world that often did not. He rose at last, his robes brushing softly against the floor, and reached for his next task. Another cup to polish. Another patient to soothe. The leeches rested in their jar, patient as ever. The day moved forward in silence, slow and tender as breath. The bell above the apothecary's door gave a small, tired jingle as it opened. The sound was soft, as though even the bell itself respected the hush of the morning. A thin thread of cool air followed, carrying the faint scent of damp soil and wood smoke from the village hearths. The apothecary looked up from his workbench. A man stood in the doorway, broad-shouldered, wearing a wool cloak that had seen too many winters. His face was drawn and pale, his hand pressed gently to his temple. He spoke in a voice that barely disturbed the air. "Good morning, master." The ache came again in the night. "It will not leave me." The apothecary nodded once, slowly, as though this was not new to him. He motioned for the man to sit by the fire, where the light was softest and the warmth most forgiving. The man obeyed, lowering himself into the wooden chair with the heavy sigh of someone who had carried his pain for too long. The apothecary moved about the room without hurry. His robes brushed faintly against the rushes on the floor, making a soft rustling sound. He reached for a small cup, its rim polished from use, and set it on the table beside the man. From a nearby shelf, he took a jar, the one that held the leeches, resting now in a gentle coil at the bottom. He spoke quietly as he worked, his voice slow and low, the tone almost like a lullaby. "The body speaks through its pains," he murmured. "A headache is not always an enemy, it is the whisper of imbalance. We listen. We restore. That is all." The man said nothing, only watched. His eyes followed the apothecary's careful movements, the way he set out the linen strips, the way he warmed the small brass cup over the fire, the way he lifted the jar of leeches as though handling something sacred. The lid came away with a faint pull. Inside, the water rippled, and a few leeches stirred, their dark forms shifting slowly like smoke underwater. The apothecary dipped his spoon and lifted one, its body glistening faintly in the firelight. "Easy now," he said softly, more to the leech than the man. He placed it upon the man's temple, just above the brow. It moved for a moment, tasting the air, and then settled. A faint tightening followed, a sensation not of pain but of strange relief, as though the ache itself were being gently drawn away. The man closed his eyes. The room grew still, save for the occasional crackle from the hearth. Time stretched. The apothecary sat nearby, his hands folded, listening to the slow rhythm of the fire and the man's breathing. Minutes drifted like the slow fall of dust in the sunbeam. The leech pulsed softly, feeding in silence. Outside, a bird called once and then stopped, as if not to disturb the peace within. After a time, the apothecary lifted the small creature away and returned it to its jar. The man opened his eyes. The tightness in his forehead had softened, his voice carried a note of surprise. "It feels lighter," he whispered. The apothecary only smiled. "The balance begins to return." He gave the man a small bundle of herbs, dried lavender, willow bark, and a touch of mint, and instructed him to steep them in water before sleep. "Drink slowly," he said. "And let the night be gentle." The man thanked him quietly and left a few coins upon the counter before stepping back into the pale afternoon. The bell gave another soft jingle as the door closed. For a long time after, the apothecary stood by the window, looking at the faint mist still hanging over the cobblestones. The day felt calm, clean, and unhurried. The leeches rested once more, the herbs hung in the still air, and the quiet of the shop returned like a deep exhale. Another small ache had eased. Another balance had been restored. Evening crept softly into the apothecary's shop, laying long golden ribbons across the wooden floor. The air had cooled, and the faint hum of the day was giving way to stillness. The leeches had settled back into their jar, the herbs hung motionless from their strings, and the only movement came from the slow dance of candlelight against the shelves. The apothecary sat alone at his table, a book open before him. Its pages were thick and rough-edged, their corners worn from decades of turning. Across the parchment, faded brown ink formed looping letters, part recipe, part riddle. The script belonged to healers long gone, those who had treated the sick in monasteries and huts before his time. He traced the words with one finger, mouthing them quietly. "For ache of the head, call the calm of earth. Whisper the herb's true name, and it shall lend its peace." He smiled faintly. It was not instruction in the way modern minds might understand. It was half prayer, half poetry. Yet there was wisdom in its rhythm. He turned to the shelf where the dried herbs waited, bundles of thyme, sage, lavender, and rosemary. As he reached for them, the soft rustle of leaves filled the silence like an old song. He began to prepare a small sachet, crushed lavender for peace, thyme for strength, and rosemary for clarity. The scent rose slowly, tender and familiar. As he ground the mixture in a stone mortar, he whispered the old words again, his voice almost blending with the sound of pestle on stone. May the air carry away what burdens the mind. May rest return to the weary crown. The rhythm was soothing, steady, the same slow pulse that guided every part of his work. Outside, a night bird called once, then twice, and the sound faded into the distance. The apothecary paused to listen. He could almost believe the herbs listened too, their small dry forms remembering the soil from which they came. He poured the crushed mixture into a cloth pouch and tied it with thin twine. From the shelf, he took a small jar of honey and added a single drop to the knot, sealing it with the sweetness of the earth. It was not necessary, perhaps, but he had always believed that healing was part craft, part care, and both must be done slowly. The candle beside him flickered, and the shadows of the jars stretched long and narrow across the wall. He leaned back in his chair, the old wood creaking softly beneath him. The smell of lavender lingered, mingling with the faint scent of beeswax and smoke. He closed his eyes. The silence deepened until even the ticking of his own heart seemed to fade. In that moment, the apothecary felt something ancient stir within the quiet, the same stillness that the old healers must have known, when they whispered to herbs and believed the world itself could listen. The night had settled thick and quiet over the village. A low fog rolled between the cobblestones like spilled milk, and the moon hung pale and round above the thatched roofs. The apothecary's window glowed faintly, a single, warm square of light in a world gone blue and silver. Inside, the little shop was hushed. The shelves cast long shadows, the herbs swayed faintly in the cool draught, and the leeches slept motionless in their jar. The air smelled of ash and lavender, clean, but tired, like the end of a long day. Then came the knock. Soft. Hesitant. 3 taps, each smaller than the last. The apothecary looked up from his notes. He had been writing by candlelight, copying an old charm for dreamless sleep. He waited a moment, listening. The knock came again. He rose, his robes whispering against the floor, and opened the door. A woman stood there, wrapped in a cloak heavy with dew. In her arms she carried a small child, no more than 6 or 7, his face flushed and his breathing shallow. The boy's head rested against her shoulder, his hair clung damply to his forehead. "Please," she whispered. "He burns with fever. I did not know where else to go." The apothecary nodded once, no surprise, no alarm, only quiet acceptance. He stepped aside and gestured for her to come in. The door closed softly behind them, shutting out the fog. He guided the mother to the low stool near the hearth. The child stirred faintly, murmuring something lost between sleep and pain. The apothecary laid a gentle hand on the boy's brow. It was hot, yes, but the pulse beneath was steady, the kind of fever that came with the changing of seasons, when the damp wind carried its small cruelties. He moved with slow precision, each gesture unhurried. From the shelf he took a clay bowl, filled it with water, and dropped into it a few crushed leaves of feverfew and elderflower. The steam rose in pale threads, curling like breath. He dipped a cloth and began to press it lightly to the boy's temples. The mother watched silently. The firelight flickered over her face, softening her worry into shadow. The room smelled of wet herbs and honey, a scent that seemed to calm even the air itself. "There," murmured the apothecary. "Let the heat leave him little by little. Do not force it out, fever is a guest that must be persuaded, not chased." He turned toward the shelves once more, selecting a tiny vial of willowbark extract. He added a single drop to a cup of warm water and stirred until the faint scent of earth filled the air. Then he held the cup near the boy's lips. "Just a sip," he said. The child swallowed, barely waking. Minutes drifted by like slow music. The candlelight dimmed, the fire whispered in low tones, and the night pressed its soft silence against the windows. The child's breathing grew deeper, calmer. The fever began to yield. The apothecary set the bowl aside and poured the remaining water into the hearth, where it hissed quietly and was gone. He wiped his hands on a linen cloth and spoke at last, almost in a whisper. "He will rest now. Keep his head cool, and in the morning, steep him tea with mint and barley. He will be well before the next moon." The woman's eyes filled with tired relief. "You are kind," she said. "The village says you heal with words as much as herbs." He smiled faintly, the candlelight glinting in his eyes. "Sometimes," he replied, "it is enough to speak gently to pain until it listens." She thanked him again and carried her sleeping child out into the fog. The door closed softly behind them, and the apothecary stood for a while in the quiet that followed. The room seemed to sigh, content, the air warm, the shadows still. He returned to his table, where the open book waited, the ink still wet on the page. He dipped his quill and wrote one final note in the margin. "Patience heals more swiftly than haste." Then he blew out the candle. The smoke curled upward, silver in the moonlight, and the night resumed its slow, peaceful rhythm. The apothecary's shop was deep in night now. The village beyond had gone entirely still, wrapped in fog and silence. No footsteps passed the window, no bells rang from the chapel tower. Only the faint hum of crickets remained, soft and steady, like the world's slow breathing. On the table, a single candle burned, its flame small and patient. It cast a golden halo that wavered gently whenever the wind crept through the cracks in the shutters. Every object in the shop, the glass jars, the copper bowls, the bundles of herbs, glowed faintly in that warm light, as if remembering the day that had just passed. The apothecary sat near the flame, his face calm, his eyes reflecting its flicker. Before him lay his worn leather journal, open to a half-filled page. He had begun to write after the mother and child had gone, but the words had slowed, then stopped. Now the quill rested across his fingers, forgotten. He was listening. To the candle's whisper. To the tiny sound of wax dripping down its side. To the way the flame bent and straightened again, over and over, never hurried, never tired. The candle, he thought, was a kind of companion. It knew the language of silence. It burned not to be seen, but simply to give light to whatever needed it, the ink on the page, the slow curl of steam from a teacup, the glint of metal on a worn brass spoon. He leaned back in his chair, the wood creaking softly beneath him. The smell of melted wax filled the room, sweet and faintly smoky. His eyelids grew heavy, but he did not yet wish to sleep. There was comfort in being awake when all else rested, in keeping watch over the quiet. He remembered his teacher's words, long ago, in a monastery high on the hillside. Every flame is a keeper of time. Watch closely, and you will learn how all things end, not suddenly, but softly. He watched now as the wick bowed lower, its base swallowed slowly by the pool of molten wax. Each second stretched, unmeasured and smooth, like silk unwinding. The world outside seemed suspended in the same rhythm, as if even the stars paused to breathe. He took a sip of his cooled tea, now tasting faintly of herbs and ash. The warmth was gone, but the flavor remained, earthy and gentle. He smiled faintly. The body slept, the flame burned, the night endured. That was enough. On the shelf, the leech jar reflected the flickering light, small shadows moving inside, slow and uncertain. The apothecary whispered softly, not to the leeches, not to the flame, but to the air itself. May all who wake tonight find peace in their watching. The candle guttered once, as though in reply, and steadied again. He wrote one more line in his journal, the quill gliding silently across the page. A healer's night is long, but not lonely, the light keeps company. At last, the candle's wick bent low, its glow thinning to a dim, golden breath. The apothecary closed the book and rested his hand upon it, as if sealing the words into sleep. The final flicker came and went. Darkness filled the room, soft and complete. The smell of extinguished flame lingered, beeswax and smoke, memory and peace. Outside, dawn waited patiently beyond the hills. The first light of dawn stretched slowly across the village, soft and tentative, like a whisper brushing the cobblestones. The sky was pale pink at the horizon, fading into gentle shades of gold and lavender. Mist lingered over the rooftops, curling around chimneys and fences, softening the shapes of the world as if the day itself were stretching awake. Inside the apothecary's shop, the air smelled faintly of herbs and damp wood, the remnants of night still lingering like a quiet friend. The apothecary rose from his chair, his joints creaking gently in protest, and moved toward the window. His breath fogged the glass for a moment, before the cool morning air began to clear it slowly. Below, the village began to stir. A cart's wooden wheels rattled faintly as it rolled along the cobblestones. A rooster crowed somewhere near the square, its voice soft against the thick mist. A child's laughter rang out, small and hesitant, followed by the gentle clatter of a wooden pail. Everything moved slowly, deliberately, as though the day had not yet fully woken. The apothecary stretched his arms, feeling the faint aches of age and the long night's vigil. He walked to the shelves, inspecting the jars and bundles of herbs. Nothing had changed, everything remained as it had been left, rosemary still fragrant, lavender still sweet, leeches resting quietly in their jar. The small world he tended had survived the night, just as it always did. He set out a kettle of fresh water on the hearth, watching the steam curl upward in pale, lazy spirals. From the garden, faint rays of sunlight touched the leaves, glinting on dewdrops like tiny gems. The scent of wet earth and crushed herbs mingled with the warmth of the hearth, creating a calm so deep it seemed almost tangible. The apothecary poured a cup of warm herbal tea for himself, inhaling the gentle aroma. Chamomile and mint, with a touch of honey, filled the room with quiet sweetness. He lifted the cup slowly, tasting the warmth with deliberate care. Each sip was a small meditation, a reminder that even the simplest routines could be grounding, restorative. Outside, the village continued to wake. The mist lifted gradually, revealing rooftops, gardens, and winding paths that glimmered with dew. The apothecary watched the world stretch and yawn, its movements gentle and unhurried. It was a rhythm he knew well, slow, careful, patient. A rhythm that healed, soothed, and endured. He set his cup down, feeling a small smile tug at his lips. The day was beginning, but it was beginning slowly, with room for thought, for care, for quiet attention. And in that slowness, he found peace. The world outside brightened. A new patient might arrive, a new task might call, but for this moment, the village and its healer rested together, wrapped in the gentle light of dawn. And so the day began, slowly, deliberately, like everything else in this small, patient world. The morning sun had fully risen, spilling warm light across the apothecary's wooden floor. Dust motes floated lazily in the golden glow, turning the small shop into a quiet, sparkling world. On the shelves, jars of dried herbs seemed to lean slightly toward the light, as if drinking in the warmth themselves. The apothecary moved slowly, his robe whispering against the floor as he approached his workbench. Today, he would prepare remedies specifically for headaches, remedies that had been passed down through generations, each carefully recorded in faded, looping script. He began with rosemary. Thin green sprigs, fragrant and slightly sharp, were gathered into a small bundle. With gentle fingers, he stripped the leaves from the stems, crushing them slightly between his palms to release the scent. The aroma was fresh and clean, filling the air like a breeze through a sunlit garden. Next came chamomile. The small white flowers, golden at their centers, were fragile as paper. He laid them carefully on a cloth and pressed lightly, coaxing out the faint perfume of summer meadows. These were for soothing, for easing the tension that gathered like quiet knots behind the temples. He moved to lavender. Its faded purple buds were crushed slowly in the mortar, stone against stone producing a soft, rhythmic sound. Crush, pause, crush, pause. The air filled with a calming fragrance, sweet and earthy. It seemed to soften the very light in the room, bathing everything in a sleepy haze. For a draught, he took a small vial of honey, thick and golden. One drop at a time, he added it to a cup of warm water. Then a pinch of crushed willow bark, bitter but promising relief, dissolved slowly into the liquid. He stirred gently with a wooden spoon, the soft swish against the cup almost melodic. For those who preferred a poultice, he prepared a cloth soaked in warm water mixed with chamomile and rosemary. The fabric was wrung carefully, and folded into neat layers, ready to be applied to the forehead. He set it aside with precise care, noting its gentle weight and the faint steam rising from its folds. He also prepared a subtle oil infusion, rosemary, thyme, and a trace of sage steeped in olive oil for several hours. It was not meant for immediate action but for slow, steady comfort. He poured it into a small glass bottle, sealing it with a cork and a single dot of honey to mark its completion. As he worked, the sounds of the village drifted through the open window, a child's laughter, a distant hammer tapping, the soft clatter of a cart on cobblestones. None of it disturbed him. The rhythm of preparation, the slow layering of scent and texture, was enough to carry the day forward. Finally, he gathered the remedies together, teas, poultices, oils, and sachets of dried herbs, each labeled in careful, looping script. They were ready for anyone who might come seeking relief, their quiet power held not in haste but in the patient attention given to their making. The apothecary stepped back, inhaling deeply. The shop was alive with fragrance and calm. The remedies rested on the counter, a small world of quiet care. Outside, the sun warmed the misted streets. Inside, the soft rhythm of medieval healing continued, slow, deliberate, and infinitely patient. The afternoon had softened into a golden haze, the sunlight spilling through the narrow window in gentle stripes across the wooden floor. The apothecary's shop smelled faintly of herbs and honey, warm and comforting, like the memory of a quiet summer afternoon. A villager entered softly, her steps careful on the creaking floorboards. She carried a small cloth to dab her forehead, and her eyes were drawn to the jars and bundles of herbs lining the shelves. She approached the apothecary with the hesitant patience of one who had come seeking relief. "Good day, mistress," he said in a low, steady voice. "Your head aches?" She nodded. "Since dawn. The pounding will not leave me." He guided her to a chair near the hearth, where the light was warmest and the shadows softened. The room was still except for the faint hiss of the kettle on the fire, and the rhythmic ticking of a small wooden clock on the wall. He motioned for her to sit, and she obeyed, folding her hands in her lap. From the counter, he selected a poultice prepared earlier, chamomile and rosemary soaked in warm water. He lifted it with slow, deliberate movements, letting the cloth cool slightly before placing it gently across her temples. The soft weight pressed lightly, as though the tension itself were melting into the fabric. "Breathe slowly," he murmured. "Feel the warmth and scent draw the ache away." The woman exhaled, almost without realizing it. The fragrance of chamomile filled the air, sweet and soothing. The rosemary added a sharp note, clear and calming, as though whispering to the mind itself. Her eyelids grew heavy, her body sinking into the chair as though the world itself had softened for her comfort. Next, he prepared a small cup of herbal tea, a gentle blend of lavender, mint, and honeyed water. The steam curled in delicate ribbons, carrying the scent directly to her nose. He handed the cup to her slowly, guiding her hands to hold it with care. "Sip gently," he instructed. "Let the warmth reach your head, your temples, your chest." She took a small sip. The warmth spread, subtle and tender, weaving into the ache with soft persistence. Each swallow was a small comfort, a tiny reminder that pain could be eased, not with hurry, but with patience and care. Finally, he offered a sachet of dried herbs to rest nearby, lavender and rosemary, tied in linen. "Keep this close as you sit or lie," he said. "The scent will continue to soothe you." The woman leaned back, her breathing slowing, her eyes fluttering shut. The ache had not vanished completely, but it had softened, becoming a distant murmur rather than a relentless drum. The apothecary watched quietly, letting the silence hold them both, punctuated only by the faint crackle of the fire. After a time, he withdrew slightly, allowing her space to rest. The room was calm, warm, fragrant, and quiet. Outside, the village continued its gentle rhythms, a cart rolling slowly, the murmur of a distant voice, a bird calling and then falling silent. In the apothecary's shop, all was patient. The poultice, the tea, the herbs, they worked not with urgency but with steadfast care. The ache softened further. The world outside seemed slow and tender. And in that quiet, the villager began to rest, guided by the gentle, deliberate touch of the healer. The sun had fallen low beyond the hills, spilling a soft amber glow across the rooftops of the village. The streets were quiet, muffled by the fading light, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of damp earth and distant smoke through the open window of the apothecary's shop. Inside, the room smelled faintly of herbs, honey, and warm wood. The apothecary moved slowly from counter to shelf, checking the jars and bundles of dried plants. Each one was in place: chamomile, lavender, rosemary, and thyme, their scents mingling in the air like a soft lullaby. He gathered the empty bowls, wiped the surfaces of the workbench with a damp cloth, and returned the tools to their shelves. The soft clink of glass and the gentle rustle of linen filled the space, a quiet rhythm marking the end of the day. Each motion was deliberate, careful, and patient, like a small ritual he performed for the sake of order and calm. Seated once more near the window, he poured a final cup of herbal tea for himself. The steam curled lazily upward, carrying the familiar fragrance of mint and chamomile. He lifted the cup slowly, inhaling the warmth and sweetness before taking a gentle sip. The flavor lingered softly, grounding him in the moment, reminding him of the quiet work of the day, the hands that healed, the herbs that soothed, the patients who had found comfort. He gazed out at the village, where the last hints of daylight were fading into soft violet shadows. A few stars had begun to appear, shy and distant, their light steady and patient. He thought of the day's visitors, of the small pains he had helped ease, and felt a quiet satisfaction. Healing, he reflected, was rarely swift. It was slow, subtle, and persistent, a practice of patience as much as knowledge. The candle on the table flickered once, then settled, casting gentle shadows across the shelves. He closed his eyes for a moment, listening to the soft hiss of the hearth, the whisper of night settling over the shop, the distant call of an owl. Everything was still, everything in its place. The apothecary made a small note in his journal. The day ends not in grand deeds, but in careful attention. Slow hands, steady heart, patient mind, these are the true medicines. He set the quill aside and leaned back, letting the warmth of the room and the lingering scent of herbs fill him. Outside, the village slept beneath the stars. Inside, the apothecary rested, ready to meet tomorrow with the same quiet care and gentle patience. And so the evening settled fully, soft and complete, as the shop, the healer, and the small world around him drifted toward night. The moon hung low and pale in the sky, casting silver light over the village. Shadows stretched long across the cobblestones, and a soft hush lay over the thatched roofs and gardens. In the apothecary's little garden behind the shop, the herbs glimmered with dew, each leaf and flower delicately outlined in moonlight. The apothecary stepped quietly onto the stone path, his robe whispering against the ground. The air was cool and fragrant, carrying the faint scent of earth and damp wood. Each breath seemed to pull him deeper into the slow, measured rhythm of the night. He knelt by the rosemary first, its leaves sharp and fragrant even under the soft silver glow. His fingers moved gently, brushing along the stems, gathering only what he needed. The leaves released a subtle aroma, crisp and clear, mingling with the night air. Next, he moved to the lavender. The small purple buds were nearly asleep beneath the moonlight, trembling slightly in the breeze. He cut a few stems, careful not to disturb the plant's gentle balance, and laid them in a linen basket. The fragrance drifted upward, sweet and calming, mingling with the faint scent of thyme and chamomile already collected. The chamomile flowers were last. Their tiny white petals glimmered faintly, delicate as paper. He plucked them slowly, almost reverently, and added them to the basket. Each movement was deliberate, a soft meditation, a quiet dance between hands and herbs, night and moonlight. As he worked, the night seemed to listen. Crickets chirped softly in the hedges, a distant owl called once, and the leaves rustled faintly in a whispering chorus. The garden held its breath, waiting, while the apothecary moved through it in slow, steady care. Once the basket was full, he carried it back to the shop, each step careful and measured. The dew glistened on the stones, the scent of herbs trailing faintly behind him. Inside, he laid the midnight harvest on the counter, inhaling the mingling aromas of rosemary, lavender, and chamomile. He paused, letting the calm settle over him, over the shop, over the small world he tended. The night outside stretched quietly, silver and endless, while inside, the fragrance of healing herbs hung in the air like a soft lullaby. The apothecary smiled faintly. These herbs, gathered in silence and moonlight, would soothe the villagers' pains in the coming day. But for now, they rested, as did he, patient, gentle, and immersed in the slow rhythm of life. The moonlight faded slightly as clouds drifted overhead. The garden and the shop, the herbs and the healer, all paused together in quiet, sleepy stillness, ready to greet the coming dawn. The apothecary returned to his shop, carrying the basket of freshly gathered herbs. Moonlight spilled through the narrow window, brushing the wooden floor with pale silver stripes. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of damp earth, honey, and crushed leaves. He placed the basket on the workbench and began sorting the herbs slowly, methodically. The rosemary went to one side, its slender leaves releasing a sharp, clean fragrance. Lavender lay next, sweet and soft, while the chamomile flowers formed a delicate pile, fragile as snow. The scents mingled in the quiet room, wrapping it in gentle warmth. From a small brass pot, he poured water that had been left to cool from the evening kettle. Tiny ripples spread across the surface as he dropped in sprigs of rosemary. The air filled with the faint hiss of steam and the fresh, herbal scent of the leaves. He stirred slowly, watching the water change to a soft green, curling in lazy currents like smoke. Next came the lavender and chamomile. He crushed them lightly with a mortar and pestle, stone on stone, making a soft, rhythmic sound. Each press released their fragrance, subtle and calming, as if coaxing the herbs to give their essence willingly. He added the crushed flowers to the warm water, letting the colors swirl in gentle spirals, pale gold and violet blending with the green. The apothecary paused often, lifting the mixture to his nose, inhaling deeply, letting the scents fill the quiet corners of the shop. He stirred again, slowly, methodically, until the mixture seemed ready to become poultices, teas, and sachets for the villagers. Every motion was deliberate, measured, a quiet ritual performed in patient devotion. A small brass spoon held honey, thick and golden, which he dropped in gently, each bead dissolving slowly into the warm infusion. The sweet aroma mingled with the herbs, softening the sharper notes of rosemary, creating a fragrance that seemed to soothe the very air around him. He carefully filled small jars with the mixture, labeling each one with looping script. The candle flickered beside him, casting shadows that danced softly across the shelves. Outside, the moon continued its slow journey across the sky, watching quietly as the apothecary worked. When the last jar was filled and the workbench cleared, he leaned back, inhaling the mingled scents one last time. The night was still. The shop, the herbs, and the healer itself were quiet and calm. Each remedy carried not only the power of the plants, but the slow, deliberate care of hands and mind, a gentle magic born of patience. He set the final jar aside, the candlelight shimmering on its surface. The apothecary allowed himself a small smile, feeling the deep contentment of a night well spent. The herbs rested, ready to bring comfort and relief at dawn, and the apothecary, too, felt ready to rest. The shop held its breath in moonlit silence. Outside, stars twinkled faintly. Inside, the soft rhythm of preparation, of patience, and of quiet healing lingered in the air like a lullaby. The first light of dawn brushed softly across the village, tinting the rooftops with pale gold and casting long, sleepy shadows along the cobblestones. The apothecary opened the door to his shop and stepped into the cool morning air, carrying a small basket filled with the remedies prepared under moonlight. The herbs' fragrances drifted around him, rosemary sharp and clear, lavender sweet and calming, chamomile soft and tender. The scent mingled with the crisp morning air, wrapping the streets in a gentle promise of relief and care. He moved slowly through the quiet lanes, each step measured, as if the village itself needed time to wake. A faint clatter of a cart echoed in the distance, a dog barked softly, and the first birds began their morning songs. Nothing hurried him. Everything unfolded in the patient rhythm of dawn. At the first cottage, he knocked gently on the wooden door. A tired villager answered, rubbing sleep from their eyes. The apothecary smiled faintly, holding out a small sachet of herbs, a jar of infused water, and a cup of prepared tea. "Good morning," he said in a soft voice. "These are from last night's harvest. Use them slowly. Let them ease what ails you, little by little." The villager accepted the gifts with quiet gratitude, inhaling the soft aromas and nodding with relief. The apothecary moved on, door to door, distributing his remedies with the same gentle patience. Each handover was careful, deliberate, and infused with calm. No rush, no urgency, only the quiet rhythm of giving, the slow, steady comfort of care. Children peeked from windows, curious but shy. The apothecary offered them a small sprig of lavender, which they held with careful fingers, inhaling its soft fragrance. Mothers and fathers smiled, reassured not just by the remedies themselves, but by the calm presence of the healer who moved through the village like a slow, steady stream of comfort. By mid-morning, the streets were lightly stirred. The village began to wake fully, yet even in movement, the air retained the lingering hush of the early dawn. The apothecary returned to his shop, his basket now empty, but his heart full of the quiet satisfaction that comes from small, careful work done with patience and thought. Inside, the shop smelled faintly of herbs, honey, and soft wood. The sunlight fell across the shelves, illuminating the jars and bundles of plants, as though the world itself approved of the night's labor and the morning's gentle giving. He took a deep breath, letting the calm settle over him. The village, the herbs, the people, all moved at their own slow, deliberate pace. And in that rhythm, he found peace. The day had begun, softly and quietly, just as it should, carrying with it the subtle, enduring gift of care. By noon, the sun stood high above the village, gentle and golden. The air shimmered faintly, warm but not harsh, and the hum of small life filled every quiet corner, bees drifting lazily between flowers, the faint rustle of linen hung out to dry, the slow rhythm of footsteps on cobblestones. Inside the apothecary's shop, the light fell through the window in calm, golden bands, painting the shelves in soft warmth. Dust motes floated in the still air, shimmering like tiny specks of starlight caught in the day. The scent of herbs, rosemary, lavender, chamomile, lingered gently, mixing with the faint sweetness of honey and wood. The apothecary moved slowly through the room, checking each jar and drying rack. The herbs he had gathered in the night were hanging now in neat bundles, their leaves curling slightly as they began to dry. He touched them gently, feeling their soft texture, noting how the scent deepened as they warmed in the midday sun. Satisfied, he poured himself a cup of cool herbal tea, a light blend of mint and chamomile, and carried it to the wooden chair near the open window. Outside, the village murmured softly, a few voices drifting through the warm air. A child's laughter, a distant clatter of pottery, the soft coo of pigeons on the rooftop. He sat back, closed his eyes, and listened. The sound of life moved around him, slow, steady, content. He took a small sip of his tea, its coolness spreading through him like a calm breeze. The warmth of the day, the scent of herbs, the stillness of the room, all seemed to blend together into one long, quiet breath. For a while, he allowed himself to drift in the peace of the moment. No work called, no patient waited. The remedies rested, the herbs dried, and even the shop itself seemed to sigh softly in satisfaction. The world felt perfectly balanced, not busy, not still, but softly alive. He thought of how each day carried its own rhythm, morning's work, midday's pause, evening's reflection, night's stillness. Each one necessary, each one patient. Healing, he often mused, was not only in herbs or hands, but in knowing when to move and when to rest. A gentle breeze passed through the open window, stirring the hanging herbs, filling the air with their perfume. The apothecary smiled faintly, leaned his head back, and let his thoughts quiet completely. The clock ticked softly in the background, marking the slow passage of time. The village outside continued its gentle hum. Inside, the apothecary drifted in peaceful silence, a man, his herbs, and the soft, patient rhythm of a summer's afternoon. The warmth of the day deepened gently, and the apothecary, still seated by the open window, allowed his eyes to close fully. The gentle hum of the village faded into a distant lullaby. The faint rustle of drying herbs swayed above him like quiet whispers in a language older than time. As he drifted between waking and sleep, the room seemed to shimmer softly. The sunlight grew hazy, turning golden dust into floating stars. The fragrance of lavender, chamomile, and rosemary thickened around him, sweet, earthy, calming, and in that half-dreaming silence, the herbs began to speak. Not with words, but with gentle murmurs, like the sound of wind passing through tall grass. The rosemary spoke first, its voice clear and crisp. "We are for remembrance," it seemed to say. "We sharpen thought and steady the heart. But only when gathered with care, only when given in calm." The lavender followed, softer, warmer, carrying the sweetness of twilight in its tone. "We soothe what aches unseen," it whispered. "We teach the mind to rest, to release its burdens like petals falling into water." Then came the chamomile, light, tender, with a voice that barely rose above a sigh. "We are the comfort between moments. The pause between the heartbeats. The small mercy in every long day." The apothecary listened in stillness, his mind floating gently in their rhythm. The herbs seemed to dance in the air above him, their dried leaves glowing faintly in the filtered light, their voices weaving together into a calm, patient melody. He could see their roots stretching deep into the dark soil of memory, where healers long before him had tended the same plants, whispered the same prayers, followed the same slow rituals. It was as if time itself breathed with them, one long exhale that stretched across centuries. Then the herbs fell silent again, swaying softly in the breeze that slipped through the open window. The apothecary exhaled, a deep, contented sigh. The dream faded back into the quiet of the afternoon, the whispers dissolving into the gentle tick of the wooden clock. He opened his eyes slowly. The light had shifted, the golden tones now mellowed toward evening. The herbs above him were still again, their fragrance lingering like a promise. He smiled faintly, whispering to the empty room. "Thank you." The breeze answered by brushing through the drying bundles once more, a faint rustle, like laughter in the language of leaves. The apothecary closed his eyes again, not quite asleep, not quite awake, resting in the quiet knowledge that healing was as much listening as it was doing. Outside, the sun drifted lower, the air turned cooler, and the soft perfume of herbs lingered, carrying the dream's memory into the fading day. The air had cooled by the time the apothecary stirred again. The light that entered through the open window was no longer gold but amber, soft and fading, the kind of light that makes the world seem slower, quieter, gentler. Outside, the first notes of the evening bell drifted through the village, low and steady, one after another, echoing softly across the cobblestones. The sound filled the air like ripples on still water, touching every rooftop, every courtyard, every open window. The apothecary opened his eyes slowly, blinking at the warm light. For a moment, he didn't move. The bell's rhythm seemed to blend with his own breathing, slow, patient, calm. Then, with the same quiet grace that marked all his movements, he rose from the chair. The wooden floor creaked softly beneath his feet. The shop was bathed in the dim, honey-colored glow of the setting sun. The herbs hanging from the beams above cast long, delicate shadows across the shelves. The scent of lavender and chamomile still lingered faintly, mixed now with the cool freshness of the coming evening. He lit a small oil lamp on the counter. Its flame flickered gently to life, casting a soft circle of golden light. The shadows retreated, dancing back along the walls. With slow, deliberate care, he tidied the workspace, adjusting a jar here, closing a lid there, as though tucking his herbs in for the night. The bell rang again. This time, its sound was even softer, a deep hum that seemed to settle over the village like a blanket. Through the open window, he could see the faint outlines of villagers moving about, a woman drawing water, a child chasing the last of the sunlight, a man closing his shutters. The apothecary watched quietly, his heart steady, his mind at peace. Each small act, he thought, carried its own rhythm of care. He poured a small cup of evening tea, just warm water, honey, and a trace of mint. The steam rose slowly, curling like pale smoke into the dusky air. He took a sip, feeling the warmth settle gently within him. Outside, the bell rang its final note, long and low. Silence followed, soft, full, and comforting. The kind of silence that isn't empty but alive with stillness. The apothecary whispered a small evening blessing, not to be heard, not even fully spoken, but carried silently on the breath. Peace to the herbs, peace to the hands, peace to all who rest tonight. Then he extinguished the candle, leaving only the glow of the oil lamp to light the quiet shop. The world outside darkened further, the first stars beginning to blink awake. Inside, the rhythm of the day drew to its close, slow, content, complete. The apothecary had just set his cup aside when the softest of sounds touched his ear, a knock. Not sharp, not hurried. Just, gentle. As though the visitor on the other side of the door feared to disturb the calm within. He paused, the oil lamp flickering on the counter. The flame wavered slightly, as if it, too, had heard the sound. Outside, the night had deepened, The air beyond the window was the dark blue of cooling ink. Crickets had begun their slow, even chorus. Again, the knock came. 3 faint taps, almost like the brush of fingertips on old wood. The apothecary took a quiet breath, feeling no alarm, only a faint curiosity, that soft kind that stirs like wind through leaves. He rose and crossed the small room, his slippers whispering against the floor. As he neared the door, he could smell the faintest trace of the outside, damp earth, night blossoms, the faraway smoke of hearth fires. He unlatched the door and opened it. On the threshold stood a figure wrapped in a dark cloak. The hood was drawn up, shadowing the face, but he could tell from the small frame and the soft voice that it was a woman. "Forgive me, master," she said quietly. "I know it is late." Her tone carried the weary hush of someone who had traveled far. There was no fear in her voice, only exhaustion and a quiet kind of hope. The apothecary nodded once and stepped aside, the motion wordless but kind. "Come," he murmured. "The night is cool." She entered, her steps hesitant but light. The scent of the night came with her, rain on stone, crushed petals, and faint wood smoke. He gestured toward the stool near the lamp. "Sit. You must rest." As she lowered herself into the seat, her hood slipped slightly, and he caught a glimpse of her face, pale from travel, framed by a few loose strands of hair. Her eyes carried that same dim reflection of candlelight, the eyes of someone who had not slept in many nights. The apothecary waited. He had long learned the art of silence, that space between words where truth gathers like dew. At last, she spoke. "It's my head," she whispered. "It began days ago. A deep ache behind the eyes, that no sleep can mend." He nodded slowly, his expression unchanged. "You have walked far with it." "Yes," she said softly. "I heard you might help." He moved toward his shelf, hands practiced, slow, deliberate. The jars greeted him like old friends. "Headache," he murmured under his breath. "There are many kinds, from worry, from hunger, from wind, from thought." She watched him as he worked, selecting a small sprig of feverfew, a few dried petals of violet, and a pinch of crushed willow bark. Each movement was unhurried, as if the making of the remedy was a kind of prayer. When he finished, he poured hot water from a kettle, letting the herbs steep. The steam curled upward, carrying that green, living scent. He placed the cup before her. "Drink slowly," he said. "The world has its own rhythm. Let yours match it." She nodded, lifting the cup. The warmth touched her fingers, her breath, her eyes. For a moment, neither spoke. Only the faint sound of crickets filled the silence, a perfect, even pulse of night. When she finally set the cup down, her shoulders had softened, her eyes gentled. The apothecary smiled faintly, that quiet, knowing smile that comes not from triumph, but from peace. "The pain will pass," he said softly. "But not because of the herbs alone." She looked up, puzzled. "Then, what else?" He gestured toward the open window, where the first silver light of the moon touched the herbs hanging in the rafters. "Because the night listens," he said. "And listening itself is a cure." The woman lowered her gaze, her breath deepening, a little steadier now, a little calmer. Outside, the cricket's song continued, slow and unbroken. And for a long, gentle while, the two sat in silence, a healer, a traveler, and a quiet, breathing night. The moon had risen higher now, pale, round, and full, its light spilling like quiet milk across the apothecary's wooden floor. The shop was mostly dark, except for the faint, golden halo of the oil lamp and the silvery wash of moonlight through the window. The woman sat still, her hands resting loosely on her lap, her eyes half closed in the dim calm. The ache that had shadowed her face had softened, not gone, but gentled, the way ripples calm once the wind ceases. The apothecary moved slowly, as though the night itself watched. He reached up toward the rafters where bundles of dried herbs swayed lightly in the cool air. His fingers brushed over each one, lavender, sage, valerian, rosemary, until he stopped at a small bunch wrapped in soft gray twine. It was moonwort. A quiet herb, used only at night, its scent faint but strangely cool, like the edge of water touched by starlight. He brought it down carefully, unwrapping the twine with a tenderness usually reserved for the living. He placed a few leaves in a shallow bowl, added a few drops of clear water from a jar marked with a single blue line, and held it up toward the window. The moonlight caught on the surface of the water, trembling faintly. The woman watched him, her voice no more than a whisper. "What are you doing?" He smiled softly, not taking his eyes off the bowl. "There are some medicines," he said, "that need more than flame. They need listening. They need light that doesn't burn." He set the bowl down beside her, the moon's reflection rippling on the surface. "This," he said, "is the night's remedy. You'll breathe its steam, slowly, no more than the rhythm of the bell you heard earlier." The woman leaned forward, eyes half-lidded, breathing in. The scent was cool and faintly metallic, like rain on stone mixed with something green and distant. Each breath seemed to draw a little more of the ache away from her face. The apothecary said nothing more. He merely watched, not as a doctor waiting for results, but as a gardener might watch the first slow unfurling of a flower. The air in the room seemed to thicken with quiet, the kind that holds memory. Outside, the night hummed faintly, an owl in the far woods, the whisper of the stream, the sigh of wind through narrow streets. Time softened. The walls, the shelves, even the jars seemed to drift into stillness, held by the same calm rhythm. After a while, the woman's eyes fluttered open again. They looked clearer, as if something heavy had been lifted, if only for the moment. "Better?" he asked gently. She nodded. "It's as though my thoughts have stopped running." He gave a slow smile. "Then the medicine is working. It teaches the head to rest, even when the heart has not yet learned how." She looked at the moonlight again, her expression somewhere between wonder and relief. "Do you always work by the moon?" she asked softly. "Not always," he replied, "only when the day has forgotten its gentleness." She breathed in once more, deeper this time, then leaned back. The moon's reflection trembled once and then stilled, as though it, too, had fallen asleep. The apothecary took the bowl and poured what remained into a small clay vessel, corking it carefully. He handed it to her. "For tomorrow," he said. "When the ache remembers you again." Her eyes glimmered faintly in the dim light. "And if it does not?" He looked toward the window, where the night stretched wide and silent. "Then you'll know the cure held." Outside, the crickets continued their slow, steady rhythm, the earth's own heartbeat. Inside, the apothecary and the traveler sat for a moment longer, bathed in the gentle silver of the moon, before the oil lamp flickered low, and all light melted quietly into stillness. The apothecary closed the door after his visitor departed. The soft click of the latch was like the final note of an evening song. Outside, the moon hung motionless, and the air smelled faintly of dew. He stood for a moment, listening to the stillness, the hush that follows kindness, the quiet that comes after something has been gently mended. The oil lamp's flame burned low, its light barely touching the shelves now. He extinguished it with a soft breath. The darkness that followed was not cold or heavy. It was alive, tender, breathing, full of memory. He made his way to the narrow cot in the corner of the shop, where a small wool blanket waited. The wooden beams above him creaked softly as he lay down. His hands, marked with years of work, rested loosely on his chest. His breath deepened, slow and even, until the edges of the world began to blur. And then, as always, the dream began. He was standing again in his shop, but it was not quite the same. The walls shimmered faintly, as though made of fog and candlelight. The jars along the shelves glowed from within, each one lit by its own soft hue, blue for rosemary, gold for chamomile, pale green for mint. The herbs above swayed without wind. Their leaves whispered, a language without words, a rustle that seemed to say, "We remember." He walked between them, bare feet silent on the wooden floor that felt more like earth now, soft and cool. When he passed each jar, it hummed faintly, releasing scents that curled around him like old songs: honey, pine, rain, ash. He reached one jar that pulsed faintly with silver light. He lifted it carefully, peering through the glass. Inside, floating like tiny stars, were droplets of something that shimmered and shifted, neither water nor air, but memory itself. He uncorked it gently. A faint sound escaped, like the sigh of distant bells. For a moment, he could see faces reflected in the glass, those who had come to his door over the years. The weary, the sick, the lonely. Each one looked back at him with calm eyes, their pain faded, their voices soft. He whispered to them, though no words were needed. "Rest now. All of you." The dream deepened. The walls of the shop dissolved into a field, endless, moonlit, filled with small, glowing herbs that shimmered like stars fallen to the earth. He walked among them slowly, his robe brushing against their light. Each step left a small trail of brightness behind him. Above, the sky was full of turning constellations, but instead of stars, each cluster was a plant, a flower, a leaf. Fever flew near Orion, lavender along the Milky Way, yarrow shimmering by the moon. He lifted his hand, and one of the glowing petals drifted down onto his palm. It pulsed once, twice, then dissolved into warmth, the same warmth he felt whenever someone healed. The apothecary smiled faintly in his sleep. Somewhere far away, the real bell began to toll again, soft, distant, steady. The sound folded into his dream, blending with the slow rhythm of his breath. As the final note faded, the field of light dimmed. The jars, the herbs, the stars, all melted into the same calm darkness. And in the tiny shop on the quiet medieval street, the old apothecary slept, surrounded by the faint scent of moonwort and dreams of quiet cures. Morning arrived quietly. No fanfare, no sudden burst of light, just the slow unfolding of pale gold along the horizon, the kind that seeps gently into the world rather than waking it. The apothecary's lane, narrow and cobbled, still carried the hush of night. The dew had gathered on the uneven stones, making them glisten faintly as though the stars had settled there before fading. A soft mist lingered between the buildings, coiling lazily around the wooden shutters and the edges of the thatched roofs. The first sound to break the silence was a single bird call, thin and hesitant at first, as if testing the morning air. Then another answered, and another, until the lane filled with a quiet, delicate chorus. Inside the apothecary's shop, the air was cool and still. The oil lamp had long gone out, but a faint line of sunlight now crept across the floorboards, inching toward the shelves. Dust motes drifted in that beam of light, slow, weightless, dancing like tiny floating seeds. The apothecary stirred. His eyes opened slowly, as though surfacing from a deep, clear pool. For a moment, he did not move. He simply watched the light trace its slow path up the wall. He rose with the calmness of someone who had slept within peace rather than time. His hands, steady and gentle, smoothed the blanket, then reached for the small clay vessel he had prepared the night before, the one holding the remainder of the moonlit remedy. He uncorked it, and a faint scent filled the air, cool, herbal, and strangely pure, like the memory of rain. He smiled faintly. "Still good," he murmured. From the street outside came the distant sound of footsteps, slow, familiar, reassuring. The baker perhaps, heading toward his ovens. Then a cart will creak somewhere near the square, followed by the sleepy bray of a mule. The village was waking in its own rhythm. The apothecary stepped to the window. Outside, the mist was beginning to lift, revealing small movements, a woman shaking out a blanket, two children chasing each other with wooden hoops, an old man sweeping his doorstep. Life, simple and unchanged. He opened the shutters wider. The morning light flooded in, painting everything in soft gold. For a moment, he thought of the traveler, the woman with the weary eyes. He wondered if she had slept well, if her pain had faded fully. Something in him felt certain that it had. He turned back to his table and began arranging his herbs for the day, lavender for calm, sage for clarity, thyme for strength. Each jar he opened released a little world of its own. The lane outside grew brighter now. The bell in the chapel tower began to ring, not as it did at dusk, but lighter, quicker, like a gentle invitation to begin. He paused to listen, his head tilted slightly. The sound carried over the rooftops, blending with the birds, the cart, the voices beginning to rise. The world, it seemed, was returning to its pulse. And the apothecary, standing amid his quiet jars and sunlit herbs, breathed in the morning, slow, deep, content. He whispered, almost to himself. Every cure begins again with the dawn. The apothecary stepped outside, closing the wooden door behind him with a soft thud. The hinges gave a faint creak, a sound so familiar it almost blended with the air. The morning was cool, carrying that mix of damp earth and bread crust that comes only in small medieval villages at sunrise. He drew his cloak a little closer around his shoulders and began his walk down the narrow lane. The cobblestones, still dark with dew, glistened faintly under his feet. Here and there, puddles mirrored pieces of the sky, pale clouds drifting like slow sails on still water. The village had begun to stir. From the baker's window came the sweet, warm scent of rising dough and wood smoke. A young boy hurried past, balancing a tray of small loaves, steam curling upward from the bread like a prayer. "Morning, Master Apothecary," the boy said with a grin. The apothecary smiled faintly, his voice low and kind. "And a fair morning to you, Thomas. Mind your steps, those stones have mischief in them." The boy laughed and went on, his footsteps light and quick. As the apothecary turned the corner, the square opened before him, a cluster of wooden stalls, their awnings striped in faded colors, green, russet, blue. Merchants were setting up, moving slowly, still half in the drowsy rhythm of dawn. Wooden crates thudded softly against cobbles. Strings of onions and garlic swung like quiet pendulums in the breeze. He passed the flower woman first. She was arranging bunches of marigolds and lavender, her fingers deft and sure. "Good morning, sir," she greeted, her voice gentle but bright. "Good morning, Mistress Lena," he replied. "Your stall smells like the heart of summer." She chuckled, adjusting her scarf. "And your shop smells like the heart of patience." He inclined his head, amused. "Both are good medicine." Further down, a butcher wiped his hands on his apron, calling softly to a customer. The sound of a whetstone whispered against a knife's edge. A potter stacked small earthen bowls, each one clinking softly against the next. The apothecary walked slowly among them, his pace unhurried. He stopped now and then to trade a kind word, a nod, a quiet observation. Everyone seemed to know him, not as a man of mystery or power, but as part of the village's ordinary pulse. He paused by the honey seller's stall, where golden jars glowed in the light like captured sunlight. "Morning, Adric," he said softly. "Morning, master," Adric replied, pushing one jar forward. "This one's new, from the East Meadow. Clover and a touch of heather." The apothecary held the jar up to the light, watching tiny air bubbles drift lazily within the amber. "It looks like dawn trapped in glass," he murmured. Adric grinned. "Sweet as it looks, too." The apothecary nodded, taking one jar and leaving 2 small coins in its place. No haggling, no fuss, just the soft exchange of trust. Around him, the morning deepened into sound, the low murmur of voices, the shuffle of boots, the caw of a distant crow. The chapel bell chimed once, high, clear, and fleeting. The world was waking completely now, but still without hurry. He sat down on the edge of the well at the center of the square. The stone was cool beneath him. For a long moment, he simply watched, the swirl of people, the clatter of market life, the soft chaos of living. He smiled faintly to himself. Even in noise, he thought, there is rhythm. Even in movement, there is rest. A young woman passing by offered him a sprig of mint from her basket. "For your remedies," she said. He took it gently, inhaling the scent, crisp and green, sharp with life. "Thank you," he said. "You've given me more than medicine." The market hummed on. Sunlight climbed higher, spilling across the stalls and rooftops. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked lazily, and a rooster gave one last, late crow. The apothecary sat a little longer, the mint sprig turning slowly between his fingers. The morning had become full, not loud, but alive, a symphony of soft beginnings. When at last he rose, he whispered to himself, "The day cures what the night remembers." And with that, he turned toward home, walking back through the golden haze of morning, each step quiet, certain, timeless. The apothecary had just returned to his shop, brushing morning dew from the hem of his robe, when a soft knock came at the door. Not hurried, not urgent, merely a gentle tap, the kind that speaks of someone weary and respectful. He opened it to find a traveler standing there, cloak damp from distant roads, hat low over tired eyes. In her hands, carefully cradled, was a bundle wrapped in linen. The faintest scent drifted from it, earthy, strange, unlike any herb he had known. "Good morning, Master Apothecary," she said quietly. "I come from far beyond the river. I bring you a gift, or perhaps a question." The apothecary nodded slowly, motioning her inside. The shop smelled of lavender and dried thyme, soft and familiar. The traveler placed the bundle on the counter, and he unwrapped it gently, his fingers brushing the linen as though not to disturb the gift. Inside lay a single, delicate plant. Its leaves were pale green, almost silver, with tiny blossoms like spun glass. The scent was faint, almost impossible to describe, a mixture of rain, stone, and a faint sweetness that seemed to linger at the edge of memory. "I found it growing by an old ruin," she said softly. "I have never seen it before. I thought perhaps, you might know it." The apothecary leaned closer, inhaling its fragrance carefully. The plant seemed to hum softly under his touch, as though responding to the presence of hands trained to listen. "I do not know this one," he said finally, his voice low. "But that does not mean it cannot teach me." He set the plant gently in a small clay pot, covering its roots with dark, damp soil. The leaves caught the sunlight filtering through the window, trembling faintly as if alive with whispered secrets. "Perhaps," he murmured, "its lesson will come in time. Patience is part of every cure." The traveler watched quietly, her eyes reflecting the soft light of the shop. "I hope it will help," she whispered. "Sometimes," the apothecary said slowly, "help is not immediate. Sometimes it is in waiting, in watching, in understanding the slow rhythm of life." For a long while, they both sat in quiet, listening to the soft rustle of leaves, the faint ticking of the wooden clock, and the distant murmur of the village beyond the window. Finally, the traveler straightened, nodding in gentle thanks. "I will leave it in your care, then," she said. "Perhaps one day its secret will reveal itself." The apothecary inclined his head. "And when it does, we will listen, together." As she left, the shop settled back into its calm. The silver-green plant rested on the counter, its leaves catching the soft morning light, whispering faintly to the herbs around it. The apothecary inhaled deeply, letting the scent fill him. Even in this small, unfamiliar gift, there was patience, there was rhythm, there was quiet promise. He smiled faintly, setting it by the window where the sun could touch it. The day had grown richer, yet slower. The way all good things do when time is given gently. The sun had climbed high in the sky, but its light was soft, diffused through the narrow windows of the apothecary's shop. Dust motes floated lazily in the golden beams, drifting like tiny specks of quiet starlight. The silver-green plant from the traveler rested on the counter, its pale leaves shimmering faintly as though aware of the sun's touch. The apothecary approached slowly, unwrapping a small cloth to examine it again. Each leaf was delicate, soft, and cool to the touch. Its subtle fragrance, a mingling of rain, earth, and something faintly sweet, drifted into the air, calming and mysterious. He set a small glass jar on the counter, filling it with warm, clear water. Slowly, deliberately, he plucked a few leaves and blossoms from the plant, dropping them into the liquid. The water darkened slightly, changing hue as the essence of the plant spread through it like pale morning fog. The apothecary lifted the jar to the sunlight, watching the colors swirl, silver-green fading into faint gold, then settling into soft jade. He swirled it gently, the sound of liquid sliding against glass soft and rhythmic, almost like a lullaby. From a nearby shelf, he took a small mortar and pestle, crushing a few dried petals with measured, careful strokes. The powder released a faint aroma, earthy yet sweet, like a memory half remembered. He added it to the jar, stirring slowly in tiny circles, mindful of each motion, as though coaxing the plant to share its secret willingly. Outside, the village hummed quietly, the distant clatter of a cart, the soft laughter of children, the faint crowing of a rooster far off. The sound blended with the gentle tick of the wooden clock in the shop, creating a slow, measured rhythm. He set the jar aside to steep, covering it with a fine linen cloth. Its fragrance began to spread through the room, mingling with the lingering scent of lavender and chamomile. The air grew warm and heavy with it, soothing in its subtle insistence. The apothecary leaned back in his chair, watching the light dance across the counter. He inhaled the mingled scents slowly, deeply, letting each one settle in his chest and throat. The mysterious plant whispered its promise softly, not in words, but in the calm, rhythmic pulse of life itself. Time passed quietly, measured only by the slow drift of sunlight across the floor. The tincture, still and steady, seemed to hum faintly in its jar, waiting patiently to reveal its secret. The apothecary's hands rested on the counter, folded loosely, his mind emptying into the simple, patient rhythm of the afternoon. Finally, he murmured to himself, a gentle acknowledgement to the plant and the day. Every remedy begins with patience. Every cure is a slow hand extended, a quiet invitation. And in the soft warmth of the shop, with the sun spilling gold across wooden shelves and glass jars, the apothecary let himself rest for a moment, listening, waiting, and learning the slow, subtle language of healing. The sun had begun its slow descent, casting long, honeyed shadows across the village streets. The apothecary's shop glowed faintly with the fading light, warm and inviting. Dust motes drifted in the beams, moving lazily, almost as if suspended in time. The tincture rested on the counter, its pale green liquid catching the last rays of sun. The apothecary leaned over it, studying the way the plant's essence had settled, how the color deepened as it steeped. He inhaled its faint fragrance, earthy, sweet, and slightly damp, like rain on warm soil. He picked up his notebook and pen, writing slowly and deliberately, recording observations, thoughts, and soft reflections on the plant's behavior. Each stroke of ink was careful, unhurried, like a gentle heartbeat on the page. Outside, the village had grown quieter. The market had emptied, leaving only the faint clatter of a closing stall, the occasional murmur of someone heading home. Birds settled in the eaves, their wings still, their songs fading. The air smelled of evening, wood smoke, fresh bread cooling on windowsills, the faint sweetness of flowers lingering in hidden corners. He paused, looking out the window. The horizon glimmered with amber and pale pink, the sky slowly deepening into indigo. In that quiet moment, he reflected on the day, the visitor who had brought the silver-green plant, the careful preparation of the tincture, the slow rhythm of a market morning, and the tiny gestures of kindness exchanged along the way. Each act, he realized, was a part of healing, not just the herbs and remedies, but patience, attention, and care. Each movement, each moment, contributed to a larger rhythm, a gentle cadence that guided the village, the plants, and even himself. He returned his gaze to the tincture. The leaves floated lightly, their edges softening in the dim light. He murmured to it softly, "Rest now, and share your secret when it is ready." He set the jar aside, brushing his hands together, and moved toward the small cot in the corner. The oil lamp was lit now, casting a golden circle around the room, soft enough not to disturb the quiet. He paused before lying down, taking in the shop, the shelves, the jars, the herbs hanging in gentle arcs from the beams, each one whispering of patience, care, and time. Finally, he settled onto the cot, drawing the blanket lightly over himself. The fragrance of the herbs mingled with the cool evening air drifting through the open window. He closed his eyes, breathing slowly, deeply, letting the calm of the day wash over him. Outside, the village fell into a hush. The first stars appeared, blinking softly above the rooftops. The cricket's gentle song carried faintly on the night breeze, steady, rhythmic, and sure. The apothecary drifted into quiet thought, then sleep, knowing the tincture, the visitor, and the day itself had all contributed to a slow, unhurried lesson in healing. And in the heart of the little shop, surrounded by herbs, jars, and soft candlelight, the world seemed to breathe with him, slow, patient, and completely at peace. The village slept beneath a sky heavy with stars. The moonlight spilled across cobblestones, soft and silver, touching each roof and window as if blessing them with quiet. The apothecary lay in his cot, the mysterious silver-green plant resting nearby. His eyelids were heavy, and yet his mind drifted, floating among the herbs, jars, and soft whispers of the night. In his dream, the plant glimmered, and a faint voice, neither loud nor urgent, seemed to echo through the shop, patience. Listen. Observe. He walked through the dream shop slowly, each step deliberate. Bottles hummed faintly, and herbs swayed as though alive. Every scent carried memory, chamomile for calm, rosemary for clarity, lavender for peace. The silver-green plant pulsed softly. He leaned close, inhaling. For a moment, he felt a quiet understanding settle within him, that healing was never just herbs or tinctures, but patience, care, observation, and the rhythm of life itself. The night deepened, and the apothecary's breathing became steady, slow, matched to the pulse of the dream shop. The world outside was still, the village resting, and inside, the apothecary rested too, at peace with the night, the herbs, and the quiet wisdom of the moon. Dawn arrived gently, spilling pale gold into the shop. The apothecary opened his eyes slowly, stretching, feeling the faint weight of sleep still lingering on his shoulders. The silver-green plant gleamed softly in the morning sun. He smiled faintly, remembering the lesson from the night, that observation, care, and patience were as potent as any remedy. He brewed a small cup of tea with lavender and a few leaves of the new plant, inhaling its soothing scent. Each sip was warm, grounding, and slow, like morning itself. Outside, the village stirred in quiet rhythm. Children's laughter echoed faintly, a baker's oven smoked gently, and the bell in the chapel tower chimed. The apothecary paused by the window, watching the life around him unfold calmly. Even in movement, he realized, there was stillness. Even in routine, there was care. And the quiet, steady rhythm of the village, and of the herbs, carried the same lesson, slow, patient, and mindful. As the day deepened, the apothecary moved among his jars and herbs, tending each with deliberate care. The silver-green plant, now in full sunlight, seemed to pulse faintly, as though responding to him. Villagers came slowly throughout the morning, bringing questions, gifts, and small greetings. He answered gently, observing, listening, and guiding, not rushing, not urging. Each interaction was quiet, soft, like the brush of wind through leaves. By midday, the shop was filled with the warm scent of herbs, honey, and sunlight. The apothecary paused for a moment, leaning against the counter. In the stillness, he reflected on all he had learned, that every cure is part patience, part listening, and part care, that the world itself is a teacher if only one takes the time to notice. As evening approached, he lit a single candle and sat by the window, watching shadows lengthen. Outside, the village was calm, alive in its own gentle rhythm. He smiled faintly, closing his eyes for a brief moment, breathing in the fragrance of his shop, the faint scent of the silver-green plant, and the quiet legacy of a day lived slowly, deliberately, and with care. And in that moment, the apothecary knew, the true remedy is always this: patience, observation, and the gentle, steady pulse of life itself.